Hello and welcome back to Pass the Torch Legacies in Jewelry. My name is Nadja de Van Diest, and I am joined today by Scarlett Klaus, who is absolutely magnificent. She is just a powerhouse. I loved getting to meet her a few weeks ago. This episode is sponsored by the Osmium Institute as an educational opportunity for jewelers to learn about a brand new material that they can possibly work with in high-level jewelry. So this is a fantastic conversation. Scarlett is so eloquent and beautifully versed in the educational component of this material. So we're bringing that to you today. I hope you enjoy this conversation. I have loved learning about osmium. If you're just hearing about it for the first time, keep an open mind. It's really cool. It's really unique. You may find an application for it in your work. So thank you for tuning in, and here she is. Scarlett Klaus, thank you so much for joining. This is going to be so fun. I had the best time meeting you recently, and this is such a continuation of that conversation. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for inviting me and the Osmium Institute. Super excited for this.
So can you tell people a little bit who have never heard of Osmium, what is the Osmium Institute and what is your role in relation to the company?
Sure. So the Osmium Institute is the institution that introduces and certifies osmium worldwide for the market. So basically, osmium is one of the 8 precious metals. I think everyone listening to this podcast probably has heard of them, at least a lot of people haven't. So gold, silver, palladium, platinum, and then rhodium, iridium, ruthenium, and osmium. And osmium being the rarest of all of them hasn't really had that much attention in the last couple of years because in its raw form, it's a gray bluish powder and it's actually hazardous to health. But the crystalline form has been available for about a decade now. And the crystalline form goes through our Osmium Institute in Germany. This is where the headquarters are. And from there is certified and distributed internationally. So that's basically what we are doing. And we have a lot of amazing partners who we're doing it with. And my own role is I'm the vice director of the Osmium Institute and the jewelry person of the company, if you will. So I do everything jewelry related, which is a personal passion of mine.
Yeah, that's so fun. Yeah, there are a couple different avenues that you guys have expressed that you have applied osmium to. It's been an asset investment, and then it can also be utilized in jewelry, which has been really, really interesting. Before we go into kind of the science of all of that, I just want to clarify, like osmium is a byproduct of platinum mining, which is what I learned from you. So a couple weeks ago, I was able to sit down with Scarlett here in Denver and heard her present, and it was really interesting. The group around me had a ton of questions. The group was all jewelers, and so that was really awesome because we almost got to flesh out what I think we'll be able to answer for a lot of jewelers today. And so for listeners who might not be familiar with what crystalline osmium is, and what makes it special compared to other metals, can you talk to a little bit about your process and how you've brought it to the market?
I think the biggest difference is that even though it is a metal, it is used like stones or like pave setting. So it's not the part that you set the stone on, but it's rather used instead of the stone or together with other stones. So, I mean, obviously, we're going to show a few samples later on, but to give a first example for everyone who's watching. So, this is a ring that has on the side diamonds, and on the top center, there's an osmium piece. And the idea with osmium is that it is a highly reflective material. So a normal like diamond, if it's perfectly cut, perfect 4C, you can see up to 6 meters, probably 7 meters, and osmium in sunlight, which Nadia also saw in Denver because there was so much sunlight. For me as a German, it was way too hot. But anyways, you can see it up for about like 30 to 35 meters. So it is super reflective. It sparkles everything away. And that's what makes it so beautiful just in its appearance. But there's also quite a few other things that come with it. So for example, you can cut it into any shape you want. So to give another example, this is an osmium heart shape that I have here. And that's just one of the examples what you can do. You can cut the most filigree logos like pointy ends, round curves, So you get really like a perfect kind of pave optic. It's called the Osmave because it's one sparkling surface, but it's one entire piece. So mainly it's used by people who are trying to get either like the absolute perfection in design or by people who say, I just want to bring something new and innovative for my clients, and by people who love rarity because, as I said at the beginning, it's the rarest of the precious metals, and there's ever only going to be less than half a ton in crystalline form available ever. So we're talking super high-end lux, basically.
Yeah, yeah. So, just from a jeweler's perspective, the way that I understand it is what the Osmium Institute offers is they take that powder, which is toxic and unusable, and they then grow the crystalline form from the powder. That's what their service is. And then, in addition to that, they cut it and they certify it and release it into the market. And the question that we got a lot at the last conversation that we had in Denver was the application. So you kind of touched on it a little bit, that while it is a metal, you can't use it like a metal because you can't really bend it, or from a jeweler who is personally interested in fabrication, you can't fabricate with it, but you set it like a stone. So you can bezel set it, you can prong set it, and it operates like a piece of, there's a ton of it. Like, it can be a flat, it's basically like a flat stone is how I would describe it, because they grow it to a certain height. So when you fabricate around that, you just have to account for the fact that it's not deep or anything like that. You make a flat surface for it, and that's kind of a jeweler's application.
Correct.
You referenced that osmium is the rarest precious metal in the world. Can you explain what that actually means in terms of availability and sourcing?
So it's quite hard because as osmium is not as studied or sought after as gold and silver have been over already hundreds or thousands of years, um, the numbers do vary quite a bit. What is very clear is that osmium is the rarest metal occurring in the Earth's crust. And it is never mined for by itself. You touch based earlier on that. It's mined as a byproduct. And this byproduct mainly comes from platinum, which is what we are working with for crystallization. It also comes out of nickel mining, which we completely neglect due to ethical standards, which I'm sure we'll probably touch later, our sustainability projects. Um, but in general, it always is mined as a byproduct. And just to give you an idea, in 10,000 tons of platinum ore, you will find about 30 grams of osmium. So this is metric system. Unfortunately, I'm not
That's
super
okay.
familiar with, but I think most people probably can get it or they can Google what it actually means. But to give you a picture, which I like personally working with, if you have like a 3-lane highway and like the highway is full of trucks all the way to the horizon, and all of these trucks are full of platinum ore, then in one of them, like you would find on all of them, you would find a sugar cube of osmium, if you will. That's the rarity we're talking about. And unfortunately, not as a sugar cube nugget, but in single atoms. So that is, on the one hand, cool because it's so rare. On the other hand, it means that more often than we would like, the osmium just stays inside the platinum. So it's never being extracted because it's not worthwhile. So it mainly was extracted sort of as an impurity or leftover of platinum, even though it is more precious from its chemical properties. Basically, what we're doing is we're taking the leftovers of this platinum mining and starting to use it for something. And that kind of puts the rarity very much into perspective for me if you just compare it to like a platinum mine. The total amount of osmium out there or that's gonna be out there, like numbers are varying. What we can say is that for over 1.5 years now, we have not been able to get any more osmium, which is compliant with our ethical standards. So we assume that it will always be less than 500 kilograms in total, which will be available in crystalline form. But yes, so that's kind of the numbers where we're moving at right now. There's more out there, but most of it will probably never be like extracted and then separated and refined.
Right. Can you talk to me, because you mentioned weight? Can you Tell our listeners a little bit about the density of the osmium, because I think that's a really important factor.
It is, it is. So we're talking the densest material on Earth here, the densest element on the periodic table. So there's different ways on measuring density, but osmium is doesn't matter which one you measure, it's always the densest. So 22.61 gram per cubic centimeter is the one that's mostly accepted in Europe, whereas in the United States it's usually 22.59 grams per cubic centimeter, which makes it incredibly heavy and dense. It doesn't, as you only need like a few fractions of a gram usually to like create a nice jewel. It doesn't make a huge difference. You may want to account for it when you go into earrings and you want to use a lot of the material, because there it could actually make a difference. Other than that, the weight is just like an interesting bonus because it adds also to the unforgeability of the material. So one of the reasons why people like osmium so much is that you cannot forge it. And there's two reasons for that, but one is connected to the density, because if it's the densest material, you cannot put anything else, like a lesser material inside of it and coat it. So, for example, a very popular way of forging gold, like gold bars as investment, is you use tungsten as it has the same density and you just coat it with gold. And if no one melts it down, then even an X-ray, which can only go in about half a centimeter, won't be able to detect it until like it's sold 10 times and someone melts it down. And if you weigh it, then it's the same weight because tungsten is the same density. And with osmium, this won't be able. So that's one of the two reasons why it's unforgeable.
Right. And it's really durable. So that's another interesting element for jewelers. I know you mentioned that sometimes the corners, especially if they're sharper corners, you want to be careful with those just because the little crystalline pieces on the edges, if they have a direct hit, they could potentially break. But overall, the piece itself is super, super durable. It's a fantastic alternative for someone who wants a really unique engagement ring instead of a diamond or a sapphire or anything like that. This would probably be the most unique option available on the planet.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the durability is, and it's also being called the eternal metal due to that. Like you could like put it in your garden, dig it up 3,000 years later, it would look exactly the same. So that gives it a very nice touch for engagement rings or wedding bands, where we have not we ourselves don't produce any jewelry, but the jewelers we're working with, they have a lot of requests for it, especially now that the younger generations are not 100% set on diamonds anymore. So there's a lot of people who look into alternatives or additions, and then osmium is kind of what they come up with. But yeah, like it doesn't have any allergic reactions. Like it's scratch resistant basically. So I'm a very clumsy person. I think I told you that when we saw each other. And my jewelry still looks very good. Like even I wore it through the whole pandemic, like with hand disinfection and stuff, and like nothing is a problem there. So you can put it in an ultrasonic bath if you want to like clean it a little bit if you wanted to, but it doesn't tarnish. So yeah, it's super durable.
And aesthetically, osmium is really interesting because to me, it almost looks like druzy, but it's a totally elevated version. It looks like all of these little grown miniature crystals on a flat plate. And you kind of touched on it earlier, but I want to reiterate that it is so, so sparkly. I think you guys did a test where you took a plate of pave and you took a plate of osmium and you tested how far the refractory of the light came off each plate. And osmium was reflective 3 times the wavelength as a plate of pave and diamonds. So that to me like helps visualize how sparkly this is, and it really shows in direct sunlight. I have a little piece of osmium here, but again, so you can kind of see on the camera
This
how
is a
sparkly it
4
is.
millimeters square. Yeah.
Yes. But when I got the plate you guys brought to the last event that we did, you had a disc and it was so very heavy. And when we brought it right out into the sunlight, it just exploded. I've never seen anything like it.
Yes, no, it's incredible. I mean, I do work with a lot of jewelers now and goldsmiths, and usually we're like inside of the store, and I tell them about it, and then I'm like, we should go to the sun, and they're like, oh no, we have good lighting here. I was like, no, no, like it's called the sunshine element for a reason. Like you want to see it in the sun, and the parallel light of the sun hits all of those single little crystals, and it just blows you away. And the main reason is that instead of a diamond which like refracts and breaks the light, osmium like a mirror reflects 100%, so no light is lost, which is why it's even more sparkly. I also love diamonds. I mean, I'm a girl who doesn't love diamonds. So I personally love the combination because diamonds have like this color spectrum after refracting the light that osmium does not present. But I think the combination is absolutely beautiful. And as one article once put it in Germany a couple of years ago already, but I very much liked it. They ended their article with saying, imagine you're somewhere on a yacht and you walk on like, and there's two women, like you will see the one wearing the osmium collier first if the other one wears diamonds. So I was like, okay, that's a nice way of putting it. So it's there to make an entrance for sure.
Yes. And you guys are all the way out in Germany, and you guys have found a lot of success in the European market. And part of what we have been talking about and how I was kind of first introduced to your team was a conversation on understanding, the any sort of hurdle that could possibly occur with bringing it to the American market and helping consumers understand it for the American market. What do you think is a common misconception that people have when they first hear about osmium?
Oh, it's probably that it's toxic because it like the raw material is. So if you look up osmium and you're not in the European realm or the German speaking realm, then like here right now, the name osmium kind of already means crystallized osmium because that's what people are looking for, Googling, asking ChatGPT about, etc. So it's kind of like crystalline osmium has become osmium. Whereas in countries where we're not yet as much, say, for example, the United States, which is a market that we're just now branching into, when you Google, you will probably more be directed to what has been known since the discovery of the material in 1804, which is that it's a gray bluish powder, not really used for any industrial applications, and that it's toxic. And when we're looking at osmium sponge, which is the name for the raw shape, it's this gray bluish powder. If it's exposed to air, it does form osmium tetroxide, and if you breathe it in, you'll have problems. So you won't die instantly, like I breathed it in too. I'm still here, I'm doing fine. But obviously, it would not be okay as a tangible asset investment or as a jewelry material if there was any type of toxicity. And that, together with the rarity, was a limiting factor over the last couple of 100 years. And then when the crystallization became possible, the material became chemically inert, and now it's completely safe in handling. Like you could even swallow it, it won't matter. The only thing where you got to be a little bit careful is when you work with heat. So if you want to laser spot weld it or solder around it, when it goes over 400 degrees Celsius, I should have prepared looking up what that's in Fahrenheit, but
No
it's
worries.
pretty hot. If there's 400 degrees around you, you have different worries. Let's put it that way. But then you want to be a little bit careful because then it can form osmium tetroxide again briefly. So you want to do it under a fume head or like protective gas. But as long as you don't apply any heat with it, it's perfectly chemically inert. And I think that's probably the main misconception that people have. They look it up, they think it's toxic. And then the second thing is when they look it up for jewelry production, they hear it's a metal. They see it's rather expensive and they think like I need 5, 10, 20 grams for my piece of my ring, my collier, something like that, because they think they need the carrier base out of osmium. But that is not the case. So usually like this ring in here has like zero point 0.2 grams, so exactly like a carat, and it's probably at around $450 right now, I want to say 500, something like that. So you only need like smaller parts and you use it like a stone, not like metal. Those are probably the two most common misconceptions.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Jewelers are good at mitigating fumes. We've got all the fumigators, and if you don't, you're kind of at a point where you just breathe all the fumes anyways.
I
Not that I
love that so
recommend that,
much.
but I know a few
When
jewelers who just don't care.
whenever I work with goldsmiths, they're like, we work with a lot more like hazardous materials. Like, don't worry about it. And when I talk to like tangible asset investors, they're like, but what happens if my house catches on fire and there's an inferno and it burns down to the ground? I'm like, well, that would be shitty, but then you also have different problems. But yeah, you're right.
Just to address the jewelers listening, you would set it exactly like you set a stone. You work with the metal cold. When you go in to set a stone, you would just do the exact same thing.
Exactly. So bezel setting, prong setting, you can glue it, you can laser spot weld it, whatever if you know how to do stones, you also know how to do osmium. There's a few things you want to know, but that can be covered in either like a 10-minute conversation, or we do have processing guidelines that we issue. So everything obviously free of charge. So yeah, it's nothing to be afraid of.
So the Osmium Institute certifies every single piece of osmium that is sold. Can you walk us through that certification process and how it works and why it matters?
Sure. So the cool thing is, I kind of teased about it earlier. There's not just the density, but there's a second thing that makes osmium unforgeable, and that is its crystalline structure. So the crystalline structure works like a fingerprint, just 10,000 times as precise as the human fingerprint on a pure square millimeter. So what does that mean? A piece like this that I'm having here on my ring, I mean, obviously the piece around my neck is a little bit larger, but if we, for example, go with your piece right now, let me share my screen. Exactly. So we can see the Osmium identification code in the third line. It starts with a Q4, which is the customs designation, and then an 8-digit alphanumerical code is following. And every single piece, it doesn't matter how big or small, gets that. Can you see that
I sure
right
can.
now? Perfect, amazing. So this is the piece that Nadia was just holding in her hand. Let me scroll in a little bit because I have a large curved
So
monitor.
what she just did is she typed in my code to her website and it pulled up
Exactly.
the exact structure of my piece that I'm holding.
Exactly. So this database, the Osmium World database, set up with customs authorities, also from the United States, by the way, is accessible for everyone. And when you know the Osmium identification code, you can call up the piece in itself. Certificate and other information you can only call up when you have the OCC, which is a second code called the owner change code. Oh, I still have it in German, but basically, I mean, what it says here, you can access it in multiple languages. You see the OIC, the Osmium Identification Code, which is also what was printed on the little foil box that Nadia was holding. It's an osmium square 4 millimeter. You can see the weight, the measurements, and the current net value if you were to buy a piece like that today. But what is most intriguing is this here, because we at the Institute work with Kion's microscopes, and they are high resolution microscopes from Japan, 75,000 euros each. So that's about, I don't know, 85,000 US dollars. And this here is a 4 millimeter piece. And as you can see, the structure is absolutely unique. So every single piece can be identified without any doubt. It goes so far. Let me just show you here real quick. Oops. Here we go. We also do this height profile from the side. So every single piece, it doesn't matter how small, is certified, gets scanned and entered into the database, and we are able to identify every single piece, which means, let me go back to here, which means we can trace them. So for example, if you were to look at a small piece of osmium and you want to know if it's true or not, and you have the code just like Nadia has, what you can do is you can enter the code into the Osmium World database and you take a high resolution photo. So I have, as a private phone, I have the latest iPhone. That's already good enough if the light is good, but otherwise you have those small attachments which you can put in front. You take a high resolution photo and you call the photo and the scan in the internet up and compare the two, and you can do it with the naked eye. And that's what makes it so intriguing, because you don't need a laboratory to tell you anymore if it's true or not, but you yourself can do it. Especially what I always say is, I was very good as a kid when you had those newspapers or magazines where it's like two photos and then like five or two sketches. Find the 10 mistakes in the photo on the right, you know, like if you're good with this kind of visual comparison, then you will be able to tell immediately. And that's what we do in the Osmium Institute. So certify every single piece, obviously check the quality, ensure that it can be shipped. We cut it into the shapes necessary. There's a lot of standardized products, but we also have, like, any shape can be requested and we can cut that shape. And then every piece gets scanned, certified, entered into the world database and shipped off. And it can be like checked by private individuals, or if you lose the code, you can send it into an Osmium Institute and we will be able to tell you which piece it is. And that's kind of the third reason why people are inserting it into jewelry, not just for its rarity and the novelty and the beauty of it, but also as a means of certification for the entire piece. So I'm mainly thinking of, for example, Swiss watch brands here. We've worked with Hublot, or Hublet, Ulyss Narden, and a few others. And they always have the problem, they bring out a new piece to the market, and a couple of weeks later, somewhere on a bazaar, it's like sold for a third of the price, and there's a forged piece. But as soon as they insert osmium, it cannot be counterfeited anymore. It's counterfeit proof. Even if someone who wanted to like fake it bought osmium to fake the piece, it would still be a different surface. So osmium doesn't just elevate your jewelry piece in an innovative way, but it also gives it a counterfeit proof stamp. And that's also kind of cool. So we're now also working with artists who are putting it into their artwork in their paintings, or people who are using it for contracts, or even for like hardware wallets for cryptocurrency. Like, you know, they use the crystalline structure because it literally cannot be copied. And in times of AI or 3D printing, something that is counterfeit proof actually does ring quite a strong bell with people.
This is so important. Our industry has been in fits about the whole lab diamond versus diamond situation. If you just remove yourself from that conversation altogether and look at what osmium offers, it is so unique and so important to have a material like this. I think, again, I just want to go back to Jeweler's application. She kind of touched on it, and osmium is grown in a sheet and she can cut it to any size and shape. They do it with a laser, right? A very high
So
precision
actually,
laser.
laser would work. You would need to do it from the backside because otherwise it's too reflective. But what we are usually using is the EDM, so wire erosion cutting, because it's even more precise. But yes, so any shape is possible. And the important thing for the jeweler, thanks for like bringing me back to that, is that they don't cut it themselves. So you order it in the shape that you want to finally use. You don't have to like work on it.
What are some creative possibilities and limitations when it comes to osmium? You mentioned watch brands. And personally, I think watch face dials out of osmium are some of the coolest possible application. Can you talk to me a little bit about how a jeweler would even approach working with osmium?
Sure. So you got to think a little bit about the design parts. We do have a jewelry academy. So when you're a registered partner with the Institute, doesn't cost anything. You'll have access to training videos and such. But basically, you have to already think in the design phase a little bit about it, because as you said earlier, you cannot bend it. So that is the only real limitation you have. If you're good, you can work around it, say like a tennis bracelet or a memoir ring where you like use a lot of smaller pieces, that would work. Also, when you have like a bend surface, but you have the carrier material to adjust a little bit, you know, you can also kind of make it work. But it always is inserted flat. So that really is important for the design process, and that you cannot melt it and like pour it into something new. Once it's crystallized, it stays in exactly that shape. So this is kind of the limitation. But when you put that aside, or you're creative, it just enables so much creative, new, innovative approaches. So when you go to haute jewelry and you think about, say, logos or really pointy shapes in the end, like you can never achieve that with stones because you still have to set single individual stones. Whereas with osmium, when you have an osmium and osma V, you can have exactly this shape with a pointy end or with a round curve. And then also, you obviously, next to just offering something very innovative, you have this means of certification. So it also is not, it's definitely not for every customer. It has this blue silverish glue that, sorry, not glue, glow hue. There was a mix of glow and hue glue, which is quite unique. But for example, another innovation that offers is it's also appealing to men. So we do have also quite a bit of requests for men's jewelry as well, because a lot of men can't identify themselves with stones, although I think diamonds on men look awesome, but a lot of men think they don't like it. Whereas osmium being a metal and having this gray, silver, bluish touch, that actually gives a complete new possibility. So that's also really cool. And that means couples jewelry is also, for example, something nice to look at, because both women and men will probably have it in their wedding bands, you know? So yeah, a lot of approaches.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what is possible within design?
Yes, of course. So I'll start with the not so nice part, the limitations, which is not a lot, but one of them is very standing out, and it's always inserted flat, as we already said. So you cannot bend it, which means when you have a bent surface, you can still work around it, like with a tennis bracelet or with a memoir ring where you use like a lot of smaller pieces. Or if you have a carrier material, you can kind of, you know, navigate it in a way such that the osmium is still inserted flat. So there is possibilities, but already in the design process, you need to think of where and how you want to insert it. And when you have that part out of the way, though, then it opens up so much possibilities because, as we said earlier, you can have the pointiest shapes, the roundest curves. Like, I don't know if that's visible behind me, but for example, this is like specifically cut shapes for a brooch that is only this big. And you can have the most exclusive, beautiful logo with absolute perfection, where you do run into limitations when you work with pave because you're working with single stones that you're setting. And also, single stones, like fractions of a carat, are not worth as much intrinsic because they're very small diamonds, whereas the worth with the osmium shape comes within an intrinsic form. So that is obviously very interesting. But I think probably another thing that really stands out is, considering it's a metal, a lot of men can also like kind of see themselves wearing it because, I mean, I personally think diamonds on men can look beautiful, but a lot of men don't identify with stones. And osmium being a metal and having this blue silverish hue to it actually gives a chance for couples jewelry as well. So we're talking wedding bands where both parties have like a piece of osmium in it. So those are really cool ideas that you can do with it. And of course, like a round watch face is like one of the options. And I have an osmium watch myself, and actually when I drive in the car, like you gotta at least be a little bit careful. If you like turn it into the sun, you're like, oh my god. So, but other than that, it's absolutely stunning. But I think where it really shows its true beauty is when you go into like high-end design opportunities. We saw a lot of them. We just had the Osmium Visionary contest featuring Katarina Perez. She's one of the biggest like voices in the jewelry industry. She set it up together with us. And the amount of designs and creativity out there of people was insane. And to see how osmium can be used in so many different beautiful approaches without like running into the limitations and quotation marks that it has, considering it needs to be inserted flat, was amazing to see.
People are so creative, and that's why I wanted to show this to my audience. It's a new, exciting form of material that you can bring into your jewelry. People find it interesting, intriguing. It's also an asset, a tangible asset. I think you're so right in regards to the application for men, because even though it's sparkly, it has this blue-gray tint to it. There's some element of it that is a bit masculine depending on how you cut it. I mean, you guys have also shown me, letters. People can do script and letters out of the osmium, and the super, super pointed elements or logos, like you mentioned, really opens up an opportunity for a lot of people to be creative. You mentioned the design contest where a lot of jewelers got to play with this material for the first time. That was really, really cool. Where do you see the market for osmium heading in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, it depends a little bit. So we do have like the two different markets, which is tangible asset investment on one hand. Now also the interest is growing in the raw material because there has appeared new usages in quantum computing where it might be interesting. So that's like in its baby shoes, but still a lot of people are eyeing on osmium for that as well. So there's the whole tangible asset side of things. But when it comes to jewelry and luxury, if you had asked me this question 5 years ago, I would have said it's gonna purely work through the rarity of it and the beauty. Like people, there's enough people there, or that's the reason why I joined actually years ago and said this is amazing. I want to work on bringing this to the market because there's enough people out there who are looking for the little bit extra special. This something that either your neighbor doesn't have or that you don't have in your collection. And there is so few osmium that already would be enough to buy the entire market. Since the rise of ChatGPT in the last, like, I want to say, I don't know, 1.5 years, um, this unforgeability aspect has become so much more important to a lot of people, like certifying it as an individual. So I think that we'll definitely see a rise in that regard, not just in jewelry, but in luxury. Like taking this one step further, you could look at, I don't know, Rolls Royce. Every Royce has like a dashboard which is unique, so like inserting a piece there, using it for contracts. We have a partner who's selling rare Pokemon cards, and he's like certifying a piece of them with like a piece of osmium. So these kind of things, like I could really see, or watches, again, like the high-end watch industry. Like I have my watch here, so it looks like absolutely stunning in a watch face, but it also means it's counterfeit proof. So I think we'll see a huge increase in interest there, especially from luxury brands. And how fast it's going to be happens or depends a lot on the people who are working with it. The bigger the brands and the bigger the names, obviously, the faster it will be. My example is always, if Taylor Swift marries tomorrow and she wears an Osmium band, then all the Osmium is going to be sold out the day after, because all the Swifties, want to have an Osmium piece. But we're also now working. We have the first interest from K-pop stars who want to like be brand ambassadors, and we just worked with an ATP tennis player who was a brand ambassador for Osmium. So I think we'll definitely see a surge for the material, because the jewelry market has been craving innovation always. Like it's always a field that keeps refining itself, bringing something new for the clientele. And especially now with the diamond market being what it is, I don't want to pick sides. I think diamonds are beautiful, and everyone has to decide for themselves how they think about artificial diamonds. But there is people out there who are looking for an alternative. And if they do, then osmium is what they will find and what they will love. So I think we'll see a lot of more applications in the future. And I'm really excited. And I hope probably a few of your listeners will be part of that.
Yeah. So how will a jeweler communicate what this metal is, and how do they market it to their clientele?
So usually it's the cool thing about osmium is it's a rather easy pitch, if you will, because the three things that it has going for it, it's the rarest precious metal there is, it's stunningly beautiful, you hold it into sunshine, and it's unforgeable. And those are kind of the three things that you have to tell a person. I'm not gonna lie, it depends heavily on the customer, because osmium does require some explanation. Whereas gold and silver and diamonds have been around for years, osmium does, it will need a little bit of a pitch, some explanation to see what it is, to make people aware of it. But once you do, I think they're gonna like embrace the innovation. And most jewelers or goldsmiths that I work with, they do have like a couple of clientele or customers that are coming back all the time, and they're also asking, do you have something new? And then those would probably be the first ones I would show it to like practice a little bit and see how they react. And I can promise you, in most cases, the reaction is going to be exceptionally well, especially if you have a piece and you can get free consignment goods from the Osmium Institute to showcase to your customers. Then I think it's rather easy, but it does require some storytelling.
Yeah, it really is for an ultra luxury client. I want to address a concern that was brought up during our last session together, because I think it was really important and a very valid concern that jewelers brought up, which is the pricing that is visible on your website. So for a lot of jewelers, that price transparency, where if a client has, a piece and they go to look it up and it's a different price than what the jeweler sold it for, that inability to get a margin is the kiss of death. How would you guys mitigate that for jewelers?
Yes. So what we saw earlier with your piece showcased that if you have the pure piece and you enter the code, you will see its price. And that is because we came from intangible asset investment side of things. So people wanted to keep track of their stock, basically. But with entering the jewelry market, this was one of the first concerns that we had from people working with it, because they said, well, we usually make also a margin just on the stone alone, and we can sell the osmium jewelry piece for some on top margin because it's something new, but still we want to be able to also put a margin on the osmium material itself. So the solution that we came up with is the so-called X code, and I can call that up real quick to show you one more time on my screen. But basically, when you are a partner of the Osmium Institute, you can for free create a so-called X code. So basically, this is the code that we typed in earlier, your piece, and we can see it has the price back here. But if I create an X code like this, it takes about 2 minutes. It's free of charge. It's very easy. Then this X code is kind of a superior code. In this case, it's for this collier. It's my personal collier. By the way, here you can also see those beautiful pointy ends and round curves that I talked earlier about. And this X code will list all the individual pieces. It lists all the individual pieces here. You can still call the certificates up. You can still call the scans up. So for example, here, this is one of the pieces, but the single prices disappear. If you want, you can even give your whole jewelry piece a price, but you don't have to. And this is a very easy way of navigating that, because you can say, I'm just going to create an X code and I give the customer an X code if they want to have a code. Some don't even want to have a code, but most do. Then they have their jewelry piece. If like we have a collier that's made out of 180 squares, so also you don't want to give them like a papyrus roll of codes. So it's very nice if you just hand them over one. And then they will just be able to see your price for the final end piece or no price at all, but definitely not the single individual prices anymore. And it takes you about 2 minutes to like get an X code done. So it's very fast.
So it basically replaces the code that is the Q4 code, which is what is available to jewelers, and the X code is what you give to the client, and that provides jeweler protection.
Exactly.
Awesome. What are your hopes for the Osmium Institute and the goals that you guys have set for the upcoming few years and your presence in the jewelry world?
So my personal goal would be that we go more into the jewelry direction than we already do, because jewelry is kind of my baby. When I started over 8 years ago working with a company, the market was like 99% tangible asset investment. Like there had been a few watches and that was it. And I joined in 2017. And then in 2020, I founded Oslery, which is my own company, Osmium Jewelry. That's where the name comes from. And we produced the first jewelry pieces just to show what is possible. And then as soon as like other people jumped on the trend, obviously having better education in jewelry making, but also better like processing facilities and stuff like that, I kind of stepped back to a more consulting side of things, because I'm also not very creative. I like want to bring this to market and I want to see the creativity of other people like make it blossom. So my hope would be that the jewelry and luxury market is the market where most of it ends up, because for me it would be a shame if such a beautiful material like offers unforgeability, is beautiful, is like ethically 100% clean, like all of these things, it would just be sad if it's soured somewhere in the safe. So to me, my vision would be to have, I don't know, at least 50% of the market share, if not even more, in the jewelry and luxury side of things. So that's what my current work is all about.
Yeah. We haven't touched on the sustainability element yet. Do you want to just touch on that really quickly?
Sure. Generally, osmium is already a very ethical product in itself, if you will, because it is only mined as a byproduct. So if you want to put it in an unsexy way, marketing wise, you could say it's using the leftovers of the platinum mining. And I think that's very interesting because no one puts a hole in the ground just for osmium. Like they mine something else and sort of we use the scraps and the leftovers. So that alone makes it a very ethical approach. However, the crystallization process is only being carried out by one company in Switzerland, and the certification process only by one company in Germany, which means all the crystallized osmium has to pass through our channels, which means we can control which osmium comes in or not. And earlier, when I touched base on how much osmium there is or where it's coming from, I also, for example, mentioned that it's also sometimes mined with nickel. Some of it is coming from Russian areas, which is now also obviously off limits anyways. So we have the chance on deciding which osmium goes into crystallization and hence enters the market. And of course, like osmium being at the price point at it is, which it is, it would probably be interesting to get a few more kilograms here and there to bring to the market, but it's so much nicer and also more beneficial for everyone if we say we make a hard cut and we have very strict ESGM guidelines so that you have osmium on your finger, it's ethical. And we have a chance to do something that hasn't been there in the jewelry market yet, because nothing has only been like introduced to the market through like sort of two companies, if you will. And hence we can set up the market rules as we want. So the goal is, and I don't know why we ever would not achieve it, but certainly this is how it is at the moment. If you have osmium on your finger, it's ethical. And that's kind of our approach here, which I think is very beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned price. That's going to be another big question that a lot of jewelers have. There's a massive range in pricing. Can you tell me what your least expensive piece of osmium is at the moment and your most expensive piece of osmium at the moment, and just show that range?
Yeah, so I mean, the least expensive is our so-called Osmium I, which is a letter, and it's like literally just a small 6 millimeter like eye, like a very how do you call it? A rectangle. And that is probably around $100 US. So, or 90, 80, depending on the thickness and on the weight. So that's the cheapest one. And then because it has no surplus on the cutting, whereas larger pieces or pieces meant for jewelry, so for example, if we take a look at this heart shape again, you can imagine like there was material out around that was lost, and that's kind of priced in as well. So there is tangible asset investment goods which don't have any offcut, and then there's like very filigrane shapes, and if they're only cut once, like one specific logo, for example, it will be more expensive because a couple of prices only occur once. But any shape can be requested at any time free of charge, and then we'll do the calculation, and then you can make your decision based on that. The most expensive pieces are the so-called investment discs, just because of their pure size and diameter. They'll probably be around 10 centimeters, so like yay big. And those are probably up to 200,000 US dollars. Yes. So we're going from 100 to 200,000. So it's
Yes.
quite a range.
That is to say that if someone wants to introduce osmium into their work, the barrier to entry is not obscene. I know that people buy some really expensive stones out there. If you're buying stones at all, you can afford a piece of osmium to play around with. So you mentioned the scale of grading, because this is going to be another question that jewelers have. And I liked what you said last time I spoke to you. There's no bad osmium or good osmium. It's all great. But there are different levels of refractory within the osmium based on how long you allowed the growth cycle to happen. And I like the example of particularly, it's basically like how tall you allow the crystals to get in the growth process. I like how you referenced that for watch faces, for watch dials, you want the level 1, the lower growth pattern, so that the hands have an opportunity to pass over the crystals. You would want the lower growth height for an example like that. Once you get taller, it really does kind of get quite jagged almost, if you will. And so can you talk to the jewelers a little bit about what they can expect in regards to grading?
Sure. So we're moving between 5 sparkle grades, is what we call it. And it's very important what you said, because a lot of people jump on it thinking it is quality, but the quality is always the same. So we always have a 99 purity, so 99.999, etc. But depending on how much osmium you put in, so if you put in more osmium and if you let it grow longer, then the whole piece becomes thicker. And we're always ranging between 0.2 and 1.2 millimeters in thickness, so it's always a thin plate. But the thicker it is, the larger the single crystals, and the larger the single crystals, the more intense and big the light reflection is, because every single flash of light is like more intense. So again, no better or worse. As you said, for a few things you have limitations, like watches. You want to have a thin piece, lower sparkle 1, for example, or 2, so the watch hands can move over. And a lot of men don't want to have it too flashy. We're talking tie clips, or how do you call those? Handcuff? No, not handcuffs.
Cufflinks.
Cufflinks. Handcuffs made of osmium. Wow, now we're entering an interesting topic here. So there's different opportunities also for men's jewelry, and they usually tend to go for a lesser sparkle, whereas a big collier or ring or something like that will have a larger sparkle. So it really depends on what the person wants, and the price varies, and it gets more expensive the higher the sparkle is, but just because it's measured by weight. And obviously, the thicker a piece, the heavier, and hence the more expensive. But yeah, it really depends on what you want, and every single piece sparkles still. But if you have them next to each other, you will see a difference.
What advice would you give to a jeweler who is just hearing about osmium for the first time and curious about how to work with it and how to connect with you guys?
We'll probably follow our Instagram because it's always very up to date. And then just reach out to us. I mean, we love working with young, innovative people out there who want to bring this forward. Like we ourselves, we're not producing any jewelry, but obviously we're using the jewelry to advertise the material. So working with Osmium means also that your pieces will be showcased and on international exhibitions. We're going from Japan over Hong Kong through the Emirates up to, I don't know, Brazil and the United States to different exhibitions. We have a lot of media coverage, be it TV, be it magazines. So working with Osmium can also sort of give you this international platform. And we're purely B2B when it comes to jewelry. We're relying on jewelers and on processors. So this is why we always embrace if they come to us, because they are our clients of the future. And if you just want to learn something about it, if you just want to have a chat, we're always like here to help. And our partner system is free of charge. You don't have any, I don't know, minimum quantities you need to buy or something. Like, it's really simple. You can become a partner of the Institute. You get access to the academy. And if you like it, and if you do the training, and if you want to work with it, then that's fine. And you also can purchase discounted. And if you don't like it, then you just don't do anything with it. So it's fairly simple. And especially when you are a partner with the Osmium Institute, you can be listed as such. So if someone in your area wants to have an Osmium jewelry piece, we'll send them to you. But the more intriguing part is probably that you can request goods on consignment. So you can have a few pieces to showcase to your clientele. And that makes it a lot easier, because as beautiful as it is when we hold it into the camera right here, like, you got to see the real thing to understand it. So yeah, come visit us as one of the international fairs, or just get in touch and we'd be happy to chat about it.
Yeah, you guys are super friendly. You've thought through all the possible obstacles that would arise when it comes to getting access to jewelers' communication, opportunity. Can you tell me? I know you have several different ways that jewelers can work with Osmium for the first time. Can you talk about what those opportunities are?
Sure. So, I mean, the simplest opportunities obviously purchase it, build it into something, or become a partner, purchase and build something. But especially for the first piece, we offer two special deals. We call them our kickoff deals, and they have two reasons. One of them is they lower the entry level, but the other one is that we also have more chance of advertising with the piece, because usually someone purchases osmium, builds it into jewelry, sells it, and it's gone, and we don't have anything to work with. So the two deals we came up with are the 3 to 5 year deal and the one-on-one deal. So the 3 to 5 year deal, rather simple. You request the osmium for your jewelry piece. Can be a special cut, can be a standardized piece, doesn't matter. You get it free of charge. You build your jewelry piece. You have 3 to 5 years. We'll like go into discussions with you to see how we set the timeline. To sell the piece. If you sell it, then you only purchase the osmium at the agreed price back when we started working together. And you keep the entire margin and everything on top of it. If you don't sell it, then after the agreed period of time, the osmium piece, the osmium jewelry piece, falls to us. But we take it around, like, it goes to us in ownership, but we take it around, still advertise your name, bring it to exhibitions and such. The other alternative, which we actually prefer and which a lot of people use as a first entry point, is our so-called one-on-one deal. And it means you get the osmium free of charge for your jewelry piece, and you create that jewelry piece 2 times. One piece stays with you. Exactly. So you two pieces of the same jewelry piece, and one piece stays with you, and one piece comes with us. And then after that, it's done. So basically, we exchange your jewelry piece against or versus a piece inlay of osmium. They should roughly be of the same value. So if it's like a silver ring that costs 200 euros and you want to have like 10,000 euros of osmium in it, then that's probably not what we're going to do, and vice versa. But it should roughly be the same area. And the good thing is then we don't have to follow up with contracts over 3 to 5 years. But the even better thing is we actually have a piece that, or both sides have a piece that they can immediately use for marketing. So it will be your piece, it's your design, it's your signature all over it. We're always advertising in your name. You will be brought to these international exhibitions. Your piece will be added to the Osmium Museum that we have. It will get some international recognition, and you have a very easy entry level of using your design language for the first piece. And then you can just go advertise and see how it goes. And that's our preferred model. As someone says, oh, purchasing it right away is a little bit too much of a risk for me because I don't know yet how it will look or how people will react, then we're happy to offer those one-on-one deals.
Yeah, this is an awesome opportunity for independent designers. It's a great way to get your name out there. It's a great way to experiment with a new material, and it's fun. So, I am coming from a hand fabrication perspective. That is my personal area of interest, but I do want to address, because I know I have a lot of CAD designers who also listen to this. Can you CAD a piece and include osmium in it? What does casting look like? So from my understanding, I just want to preface this, I think it's still set like you would a delicate stone. You can't really cast and place it, again, because of the issue of heat application to the osmium, but you can CAD with the dimensions in mind and then still set it.
Exactly. Yes, that's completely correct. So I myself, I'm not a goldsmith. I'm always being told treat it like an emerald. It can withstand more, but it's a slightly brittle material. So you want to like treat it like an emerald and work your way from there. And you can use any sort of acids on it, whatever. That's not the problem. But when you go towards heat or when you keep taking it out and in again, then you might run into problems. You can always demand free of charge stainless steel shape, the same shape as your osmium, to like finalize your jewelry piece and set that. And then only when it's perfect, you set the osmium. So we offer a lot of like possibilities for that. And all we need to cut your specific shape is either a CAD file, a CAD file, or a technical drawing, and we'll create a CAD file out of that.
Yeah. And I think the other question that I got from some of the other jewelers in the room when we spoke last time was, how does it set? And what I really liked is someone describing it like, particularly in bezel settings, it's really, really clean because the metal comes down and almost latches onto the crystalline form. So it double secures, it almost acts like a key and it just locks in and it's super secure when it's set. So just in case there were any questions about whether or not it would rattle or anything like that, honestly, I feel like this is one of the coolest things that you can set because it will not go anywhere, it won't move. Where can people go to learn more about osmium and the application process and connect with you guys just off the bat other than Instagram?
So our website is osmium.com, which is probably the easiest thing to do. Just call up the website, and our main information email is info@osmium-institute.com. And you can just write an email, get in touch. You can call our hotline. We also have American representatives. And yeah, just get in touch. Like there's multiple ways how we're offering it. Then we can set up a Zoom call, a telephone call, send you over the processing guidelines. So yeah, multiple ways how to do it. And we're super looking forward to hearing from hopefully a lot of new people.
Yes. Scarlett, this has been so fun. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you would like to touch on in regards to osmium?
Well, I think we covered most of it, so I'm super excited for this. Another thing that I probably wanted to bring up just because it jumps to my mind right now is this Osmium Visionary contest that we had this year was like exceeding all expectations, which is amazing, and probably also because obviously Katarina having such a big followership. But the winners that won the Osmium, so we actually gave Osmium worth 60,000 euros out for the design for the three winners. They have already been crowned, but we just announced and found out we're going to have the same contest next year again, start of 2026. So if any of the designers here think, oh, that's cool, I might want to look into that, then follow our socials and Katarina's socials, and you will be the first one to learn about it. And you will be judged by an international jury, not just by us, but we brought some real high-end designers into it. And this is probably also a cool way to like start working with it. Yeah, and if there's any interest even before that, then obviously even better, just reach out to us.
That's awesome. I'm so excited for you guys. I think what you're doing is super cool. I like that it's a protection element for a lot of jewelers to have a piece that is completely non-forgeable. You can't counterfeit it. And it's just exciting. It's a cool new material. I'm glad people got to learn about it today. And thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having us and inviting me to this podcast. And I wish you a wonderful day. I'm going to go to bed soon here in Germany, but I wish you a wonderful day.
Scarlett, thank you so much. Thank you to the Osmium Institute for sponsoring this conversation as an education opportunity. It's been an absolute joy and pleasure.
Pleasure was all ours.
That concludes this episode of Pass the Torch featuring the Osmium Institute. You guys have been so amazing and very responsive to jewelers and the opportunity to use this material in our work. I think it's super exciting. I love how it looks. I think it's a brilliant new application and opportunity on so many different levels. I think that there will be a lot of jewelers who hear about this and want to learn more. So you can find them at Osmium Institute on Instagram, and you can follow me as well at Pass the Torch Jewelers. I am having so much fun with these conversations. I learn something every single week. I hope you do as well. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you guys on the next one.